If you've been around fly fishing for any length of time, you know that there's a lot of folks that will find one small facet of the greater pursuit and dive into that topic at significant detail. And sometimes it yields really incredible results because that's where you get a lot of innovation. That's where you get a lot of creativity, is people who really get jazzed up about one small aspect of the greater picture of fly fishing. And there are some books that celebrate that very thing. We'll talk about one of those today on Casting Across. Hi, I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. In 2003, I moved to South Central Pennsylvania for graduate school, but the reason I chose South Central Pennsylvania was because I wanted to fish. I had grown up fishing in South Central Pennsylvania on some of the limestone and limestone-influenced creeks that you find there. So I was able to relocate to Carlisle, and put me in great proximity to the Yellow Breeches Creek, Letort, Big Spring, Falling Springs, and countless other streams. And at that same time, I was also in social work. And so vocationally, I spent my time driving around helping folks in a pretty wide radius, and it put me on the doorstep of a lot of these famous creeks. And so I dove in head first into finding out anything and everything I could about all that Pennsylvania had to offer, which is a remarkable diversity of fishing in general and fly fishing for trout and spring creeks in particular. And so there's some phenomenal books. There's Charles Meck has a book, Dwight Landis has a book. Now these are older, but they're still valuable. More recently, there's the Fly Fisher's Guide series, that guide to Pennsylvania, and then the spectacular Headwaters books, Keystone Fly Fishing. These are great books. I'm sure I'll talk about them at some point in time in the future as I have them upstairs. But this book was one I found in the library and I had to pick up for myself. And what is this, you might say? What is a pure black book? Well, this is Trout Unlimited's Pennsylvania Guide to Limestone Streams. And this was put out in 1992 and written by A. Joseph Armstrong. So this is the limited edition with the fancy gold leaf and the hardbound, but you can find it in paperback online relatively easy. And we'll talk about the 1992 part in a minute. But what this book is an exploration of any and every creek in Pennsylvania, as far as this gentleman could find, that had significant spring creek influences. Now, this video is not the time or the place to go into detail as to what that might be in great specificity, but generally speaking, these are creeks that have a significant spring influence coming up from that limestone bedrock as opposed to runoff causing their main flow. And so what that does is a few things. There's a consistent temperature and usually a consistent flow. And because of the nutrients that are found in these streams, it is generally better for insect and plant life, which of course yields good experiences for trout as they're looking for food. But what is this book? Again, it is a catalog of all of the spring creeks in Pennsylvania that Mr. Armstrong could find in 1992. It's a great resource. So, for example, right here is a map of Cumberland County, where I lived, and where a lot of folks think about when they think about fishing spring creeks in Pennsylvania. And it has a list of a map of all of the major spring creeks. And then, page after page, he goes into detail about what those spring creeks are. There is a small section of pictures that I just happened to, that's fantastic. If that doesn't get you excited, you need to spend more time fly fishing spring creeks. But just goes through, and some of them, as you can see here, are very, very short entries saying things like it's a dry stream bed, or there's not enough water in there to sustain trout. But here's why this book was so influential for me. This got me looking outside of those major rivers that are in those major fly fishing guides for Pennsylvania. It got me looking in little ditches to see what the water was like, to see what the vegetation was like, taking a streamside thermometer and dipping it in there and figuring out, are there fish or there potential for fish in this creek? And what I discovered was, as much as I really enjoyed catching 12, 14, 16, and even bigger fish in some of the more popular spring creeks, finding small creeks that sustained populations of wild fish, primarily browns, but of course rainbows and brook trout as well, that was as exciting an experience for me. To catch that 6 or 8 inch wild fish in a tiny stream I had to discover, that had a equivalency with finding that 12 or 14 inch fish in the more popular stream that was probably stocked there by a local conservation organization. And so this book, again, it offers you a lot. I know in the 30 plus years since the publication of this book that some of the streams that he said are no good have actually gotten okay, and some of the ones he said are okay have actually gotten worse, and that's just the nature of the beast. But It's a great resource. It's a great project. If somebody wanted to pick it up and do it again, I think that would be something that would be well received. But I would definitely encourage you to check this one out. Again, a Pennsylvania Guide to Limestone Streams, Trout Unlimited, but also by A. Joseph Armstrong. Worth looking at. You might not find this fancy edition, but you can find it online. Now, if there's a book that goes into some sort of niche aspect of fly fishing that you have enjoyed, some relatively narrow topic, but that yields really, really good results, let me know in the comments below over at castingacross.com, which is where you can go for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.